So when we talk of various influences in our lives, we understand that film as a media is a very, very powerful influence.
Yes.
You said, the reaches mass, it's tremendous. And theatre is still surviving, struggling in certain areas, but still surviving. So what is it about theatre that still makes it, like a flame that's very difficult to extinguish?
It is alive. You can see it in front of you. It is living. It is moving. It is yelling. It is screaming and so on and so forth. You see it. It is falling on its face. It is standing up again. It is kicked down again. It's standing up again and so on. So you see all those struggles manifested in front of you. And you realize what is manifested is you yourself. They're showing you to yourself on the stage.
True. And I think that connect with the individual is what makes somebody want to go to the theatre again.
Yes. Mm-hmm. There's one thing, that is the one kind of theatre. The other kind of theatre, the arts. And therefore, when I was in Delhi, I came to know the lives and the domestic lives, the formal lives of artists, painters, of musicians, of dancers, and so on and so forth, the kind of various worlds they lived in, which ultimately brought Indian society together. But you had to explore them, find what was the best for you to preserve, find what was important for you to bring up to date, because you can't just remain in the past. You can't just go on and on and on, repeating all the forms that may have been useful for something 300 years ago, 500 years ago, whatever. But now we've come into a new age.
So new age requires new mediums of creativity?
Well, it requires a way to respond to to the changes which are taking place in society at all levels, whether it's in the level of business or whether it's in the level of war or whatever it is.
And when we talk of various creative media, your wonderful attempt at curating, at collecting such wonderful pieces of art, your photographs, that was an attempt to say what?
To see what was going through the Indian mind, through the creative mind in India, how it expressed itself, what kind of visual language did it use? Did it use the language of the past, of Sanskrit times? Or did it use a language which felt that was outdated and that you had to come up to today, and that you had to discover the language for today, the visual language for today, the verbal language for today, the intellectual language for today, etc., and so on and so forth. Because on the basis of that, you judge your society. And it is through a series of experiences that you have. Because when you're in the field of art, then you're sharing whatever you have done, you're exposing to mankind, you're exposing to the society around you. You're taking in, accepting with great humility and so on, all the nasty things that are said about you, because to begin with, people will always say nasty things. They will say nasty things until they begin to find that, oh my God, there's money in that. Oh my God. You get a Hussein and you want to spend $1.5 lakh of rupees on a Hussein painting and so on. Oh my God. So we have a materialistic mind. So we want also to invest in things which will bring us greater profits. And the greater profit is not in bringing little toys here and there, etc., but finding a new language for a new age.
So over the years, you've broken many stereotypes, you've challenged many existing norms, and you've struggled, and you've had your fair share of people critiquing.
Yes.
How have you handled criticism so beautifully?
You must be sensitive to your time. You must not be all the time, what shall we say, carping, all the time negative, all the time being so sensitive. And how dare he say this thing about me? How dare he say that about me? What is all this nonsense, etc., etc.? That's an egoistic kind of thing. And to a certain extent, to the young Indian artists who opened up the world, not only to the political life in India, who opened up the mind, Mahatma Gandhi, on the one hand, in his own way, and with his disciples now, with his ancestral disciples, etc. And on the other hand, the other people in the other art forms. So that's a whole world which had to be explored.
As an artist, as somebody who's had so much of limelight throughout his life, you constantly speak about being humble, humility, and that's something you've managed to keep with you. How does one manage the pressures of fame and recognition and yet remain humble?
The business of fame and recognition didn't take me up very high, because you've got to take all this with a pinch of salt, you see. Don't take yourself all that seriously. Don't think that because you're in this period of the 20th century, etc., that means that you are a Picasso now. You can't go around strutting around the streets of Bombay like a Picasso. Picasso went through hell before achieved his status in the European art world. And then all the worldly experiences had to fit in with that business of, what shall we say, the intellectual quest, you know. All that had to find a place.
Mm-hmm.
So it was rather difficult, it was rather painful at times, and it was rather erratic at times, but on the whole, it balanced itself.
So, in times of stress, and I'm asking you this because over the years, this is something that people have faced and will continue to face. How does one remove oneself a little and see the bigger picture?
One shouldn't remove oneself too much. One should always become part of that picture and become part of that endeavor which one is seeing all the way around. And I think that, as I think on the whole we've been able to do in India, you open yourself to the world of the creative artist and you find it's a warm world, it's an open world, and on the whole, by and large, it is a humble world. It doesn't put on great airs, etc. A person like Hussain does not have to go on putting on great airs, or Tayyab Mehta and other people who have reached that stage. And then, even as you go through things that you eat, etc., go through whatever you have over there and pick this and remove that and see that the whole thing is clear and health-giving and sustaining your powers of thinking, your powers of growth and the rest of it. All that is very, very useful if you think of it with a great deal of care.
So you talk of opening yourself out. And I think somewhere when all of us want to open ourselves out, there's something in the mind that says, stop, you're making yourself vulnerable.
Yes.
Is that the ego, or is that somewhere a fear of wanting to go into uncharted territories?
Well, it depends upon what you mean by uncharted territory, because anything can be uncharted, you see, because your territory is what? Your compound wall, or the wall of your house, etc., or what? And then you find that becomes a prison for you. Therefore, you want to go out into it. The wife wants a carriage, you see, and he wants a car, and so on and so forth. Your son wants a motorbike and to roam around, to find his way around the world, etc. So you've got to exercise your powers of discernment, and because even as you're reaching out, you're reaching inwards also. And you want to educate yourself. You've got to become a sort of a college of ideas yourself by looking at others, studying others. And in that way, say, for example, the older people in the history of the development of modern art in India have played an important part in shaping the Indian mind, shaping the Indian sensibility. Indians accept new modes of self-expression, etc. And it has studied itself quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So it has affected the film world, it has affected the world of music, it has affected the world of dance, etc., etc. It has affected all the worlds.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the evolution of the individual, what is the role of the intellect and what is the role of the heart?
It depends upon their physical location in the human body.
Mm-hmm.
Your intellect may be up over here. Your heart may be down below over here. Now you reconcile them, bring them closer together for God's sake.
That's so beautifully put. Wonderful.
Not at all.
So when we talk of life, we talk of various other forces that come into making life more positive, more enriching. What is the role of relationships in this?
It's very important. Very, very important. Because the relationship is entered into in order to give the individual greater stability as a recognized member of society, as a respected member of society, etc. So his role within society is extremely important. And therefore his role as a feeder of ideas, as a feeder of environments and so on, how you decorate the inside of a home or whatever. That plays a very important part in shaping a sensibility. And without your realizing it, and without a person buying works of art at substantial sums of money, etc., quite realizing it, it grows on him. It grows. It's like a seed.
Mm-hmm.
It's thrown on the ground and you feel it's dead. And you're absolutely surprised to find, oh my God, where do the leaves come from, the stem come from, the flowers come from, where the shading and so on, where does it come from?
And you establish a relationship with that then?
Yes, you have to. Yes, you do. But that is part of nature. You have to open yourself up to this.
Mm-hmm.
And that is one of the great sort of joys of being a human being, of being a human being who's opening himself up through his instincts and through the various faculties and so on, through his mind and the rest of it, etc. And then becomes a tremendous experience.
So talking of values,
yes,
what are some critical values which you have always wanted to stand by through your life?
You've got to be very careful to see upon that I can't sort of give myself all sorts of airs, you see, as being a holy man, as being, more knowledgeable than thou and so on and so forth. Not at all. All the time you're questioning yourself, even as you're searching. All the time. And you're asking yourself whether you're really worth it. You have to be in a quiet kind of way, you have to be a person who's not very comfortable with himself. You see, You can't take it for granted that I'm this and I'm that and I'm that. I'm not fooled by those things. I'm not at all. But then there is a quest. You're involved in a quest whether you like it or not. Whether you like it or not. You can't live alone on an island, with 2 or 3 stones around you, etc. and surrounded by a vast ocean and nobody in sight and nobody to communicate with. You're in the world, you have to communicate. And you've got to take life as it comes. But you can shape that life. You can exchange ideas, etc. with that life. And so that is a task, really. That's the important task.
How do you make life talk to you?
I don't listen to it.
Uh-huh. We'll have to ask life that, huh?
No, this is a matter of inner questioning. And to a considerable extent, it's when one is talking with persons like you who are involved in this. You can see through her art, you can see how she behaves, what she talks, and your conversation, etc., etc. Ultimately, one is trying to create a more beautiful world, a carefully thinking world, a world of beauty, but at the same time of simplicity. Because you can make yourself absolutely crazy pursuing beauty, beauty, beauty. What do you mean by beauty? Sometimes it is just a simplicity that makes for beauty. And whether it is in a form of sculpture or a form of painting or whatever it may be, or a few lines scratched on a pad or whatever, you've got to discover those things.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a great deal of art, a great deal of all this in the history of our culture in this country and largely in Eastern countries. Tremendous amount of material, tremendous amount. And I think that this is what the West has discovered over the years, since it became, whether it liked it or not, it became interested in Indian artifacts. Formerly it was, what the Western educational institutions sort of provided, what is art, until they came to India and found out, art is everything, on such a scale, on such a vast scale, and which is such sensitivity and with such relationship to the things around you. It does give you a great deal of joy, and you can really make something very beautiful out of life.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we don't take the opportunities that come our way. We don't know how to take the next step. Is what should I do in order to encapsulate this, to hold this together, to share it with other people, etc., and so on. So you've got to go on building and building and building in the sense that you build up. When you're working on something, you find that, my God, I've got to build up a library. In order to do any kind of research on the material around me, I've got to have a large number of books, refer to this, refer to that, and so on. So you spend a great deal of your time really doing that kind of research. It's a research into yourself also.
True, very true. So as we are one of the youngest countries in the world today,
Yes.
Do you think that the generations that are coming up, are we giving them enough spaces for reflection to take the journey inward, or is it only becoming commerce related?
It's largely the latter, yes. It is largely the latter. And those people are confused, they don't know. Because they are astounded because a lot of rubbish that they produce go in for enormous sums of money, etc., in the marketplace. And the real, authentic, very good works, etc., have no buyers. Because it's also too subtle or too deep or too profound or whatever it may be. And I can't be bothered, that rich man cannot be bothered to think so deeply about this, that and the rest. But ultimately it is an inward quest. And that quest arises out of the recognition, out of the realization of, as a person grows older, that he cannot just remain by himself, that he lives in a world, that he's got to get on in that world, and that it has to be done with a great deal of dignity, with respect. That is the most important thing. You show respect to other people.
Mm-hmm. And I think when you show it, that's when it comes right back to you.
I think so. It makes for a pleasantness and a sort of dignity in relationships and communication.
Mm-hmm. For any relationship to be successful, any key ingredients?
No, like this, the opportunities, as institutions like yours are giving us opportunities for us to express ourselves. Like, for example, because of the kind of period in which we find ourselves now in this world today, over here, say, and here in Delhi, you have so many shops, so many types of business and so on and so forth, whether it's in terms of clothes or saris or jewelry or food or whatever, and so on. Created an entire climate around you. You can smell it, you can feel it, etc., and so on. It can also be quite terrifying at parts, So sometimes you go to a place and alongside, you come across this rack which has tremendous amount of display, a lot of rubbish,
Mm-hmm.
along with a few brilliant things. They cannot tell the difference between the one and the other. And why do you spend your time on that rubbish And where do you find the time and the place for those other things? Without going to the exorbitant things of having things for lakhs and lakhs of rupees, which people cannot really afford.
So how is talent found or defined or understood? Is it only about aesthetics, or is it personal choice, or is there a universality to it?
All three combined, because it is each of these factors. Because one may be spending a great deal of money buying things which they think is very beautiful, very this, very that, and the rest of it. And then suddenly discovering 5 years or 8 years or 10 years later, my God, what a lot of rubbish I've accumulated. I shouldn't have spent so much of my money on so many of these things. I could have done this instead or done that instead, etc.
So is it because perception changes over time?
To a certain extent, it depends. A society eyes merely money and values is defined by money. Then that's rather dangerous. On the other hand, there's a great deal of very, very fine talent which finds no market, which is sad.
So how does one encourage talent to come up and at least get a level playing field?
By working together by an art gallery, working in companionship with the people whose works they show,
Okay.
with affection and with true respect for them. And to a certain extent, there's a considerable degree also of detachment. You are on their side. But at the same time, you have to be detached. You have to be fair and you have to be honest. You can't go on saying flattering things, etc. And then the way things shape themselves around, you go to one part of Delhi, say for example, and then you have Triveni Kala Sangam. Then you have, what are the other institutions that are around over there?
So there is Mandi House.
Mandi House and so
there
on.
are
So
Kamani
around that,
Auditorium.
that's where, and so on. So collectively, I mean, what do they do ultimately? What is their, are they conversing amongst themselves in a way? Are they exchanging ideas and the rest of it? No, and you find that all the time they're trying to make as much money as possible, and they know very little about art themselves. Because anything that you have to do, where in any field, you've got to, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a musician or whoever it is, you've got to study the history of that particular form.
That's a very valid point, sir, coming to the fact that our society places a lot of emphasis on logic skills and mathematical skills. How do we get to the center stage cultural skills, appreciation for culture, appreciation for theatre, for the arts?
You must discover the human element in it all. That is the most important thing, the human element.
And the human being is the closest to culture.
Yes, it is closest to culture, but in the genuine sense of the term, saying the person is not just trying to accumulate things in dark rooms like this. This is, oh, do you know how much this is worth? And, in the stuff that I have bought, etc., etc. It is a search. It's a difficult search.
How important is it for anybody who's been deeply involved in any particular art to understand that certain things need to be done for posterity? How important is it?
I think it's very important, but it is something that one has to discover for oneself. Because you're not going to do it for posterity, you're doing it for the future. You see, you're not doing it with a retrospective effect from the past. You're thinking also for the future. You're thinking of your own society, of your own history, of your own thing. What is going to happen to me after I die? And a very simple thing, like what kind of a funeral am I going to get? No, honestly, people are touched. I mean, concerned really with all those things because they're obsessed by them. And in all this, to find something which is sensible and which is within limits. I mean, where the search is within limits, certain limits. Don't drive yourself mad, or drink a tremendous amount in order to show, like many people who are in the field of music or the field of dance, etc., drink a great deal in order to show how vivacious they are. And that's not the point. So that kind of tranquility of mind and the earnestness of the quest at the same time. You're earnest at the same time. You're not happy with yourself in the decisions that you've taken, you've made, etc. There's so many factors that come into the shaping of a creative society in an age like ours.
Mm-hmm. How does one handle disappointment or failure?
By not crying too much. By trying to recognize the fact that it is your own failure. After all, the whole of society has not got up against you in order to batter you down and so on. So it's given you opportunities, you've taken them or not taken them, etc. So a great deal of that is dependent upon you. It is upon you. But at the same time, you have to have institutions like this, as you've been able to create, which have the right kind of atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
For example, here you're kind enough to invite us over here in a very pleasant kind of surroundings, etc., very comfortable, where we can share thoughts and ideas with a certain peace of mind, no pressure all the time. Somebody doesn't open the door again. Have you finished or not? Damn it. All that has to be taken into account.
What gives you joy, sir?
I suppose joy gives me joy.
Okay. I must have a conversation with Joy.
something which stirs inside you when you're coming to an art exhibition or with your music, an occasion where music is played, whatever, any one of the art forms and so on. Then you see how relevant it is to your own times, how relevant is it going to be to the immediate future. How can you build a history of my India on top of this, you see?
Looking at the current day scenario of the arts in general and theatre, any challenges you think that they're facing and they can overcome?
Difficult questions.
Mm-hmm.
To a certain extent, I found the answer to the work that I did in the National School of Drama.
Okay.
Because of the plays that I did, the production that I did, the productions that I took to different parts of the country and so on, it helped people to understand the theatre better with greater clarity, etc.
True.
And to discover for themselves their norms of evaluation. On what basis do they evaluate this or do they evaluate that and the rest of it, whether it's in music or dance or whatever. So always, one is always thinking and thinking and thinking all the time. Mm-hmm. And nothing is static because you can't just think backwards into time. You're always thinking for the future.
You're right. And I think that understanding is a critical challenge.
Yes, it is a critical challenge because it depends upon how you apply those things to yourself, because before I come to somebody else, I have to be my own judge.
Very true. Very true.
Because other people, their response in order to denigrate you, to play you down, depending upon your own relationship with them in society, or to build them up, you see, through flattering and so on and so forth.
This one-upmanship.
Yes,
it's another challenge.
These are the games that are being played constantly all the time. And the greater part of one's time and energy and money goes into that kind of exercise. Afterwards, you get a little fed up of.
True. What is it, sir, that makes a play click?
A recognition of certain truths in life which had not occurred to you before the play, because those ideas have come into the play, and the play has drawn your attention to this. You had not thought of it in those terms before. And therefore every play, or as every film, every piece of music has got to be relevant to society.
So that connect has to be there.
Yes. And they're not things that you just go into a shop and buy this. This is a very good connect for this or this. You've got to discover it alongside with life, alongside your relationship with the people who are close to you, or your relationship with the people who are your bosses, etc., who are below you, etc., and the rest of it. It is a demanding sort of a struggle, search.
Mm-hmm. As per you, what is the role of a director? Actors play a role, but what does a director do?
A director studies very, very, very carefully the very play that he is interpreting for his players. Mm-hmm. They don't have the time. Each actor says to himself, well, I've got that role, I've got that main role over there, or I'm playing the fool over there, and so on. Oh, damn it, that idiot, etc., that idiot's stupid-looking fool has got the major role, I should have been given that role. So these kind of conflicts, etc., take place in something which is you're presented to the world.
So what does the director do?
In a quiet kind of way, fight against his challenges. And seeing that he's not also doing exactly the same thing that he's fighting against when somebody else is doing it.
Is it important for a director also to be an actor, to be able to direct well?
Yes, I think so, up to a point.
I think any tips you'd like to give for people, because a lot of people want to come into theatre, a lot of people want to move into movies.
I know, but I didn't bring my wallet with me today, you see, for the tips that I want to give you.
I love that.
You asked for tips, etc., and I said, my God, I don't have enough change.
Okay, I think I'll have to become a director now to take the tips. Okay. Any gyan you'd like to give?
I wish I had some to give.
Okay.
One takes a step at a time. Every day is a new discovery regarding the world around you, regarding yourself. And you're more likely to find out something wrong with the rest of the world around you than with your own self. And quite frequently it is yourself that has created all the chaos in the world around you.
Lovely. Okay. So tell me, what role does humor play in one's life?
It's important, It depends upon how is it used. Is it used in order to make fun of somebody, in order to laugh at somebody, in order to make that person feel small or lost or, being with not sufficient talent, etc., etc., and therefore he's been looked at and laughed at, etc. So that's very humiliating for somebody. Ever go to that extent in dealing with an actor in a play? Never do that. You always build up the confidence of that person. And you have to hold yourself responsible for getting the right kind of atmosphere within that group that is working together.
Okay. So does there have to be very strict discipline?
Yes, but strict doesn't mean that you go on shouting and screaming and yelling at people. It doesn't mean that. Sharing your ideas in a quiet kind of way. It just depends upon the place you have in a particular society, the people around you and so on, because they also shape your behavior.
What is it, sir, that spurs creativity to take the next level? Is it a good atmosphere? Is it challenges?
That is the only way you can survive creativity. How can you have, working with things which are like empty boxes of cigarettes, etc., which are thrown on the ground, or matches which are thrown on the ground and so on. All the rubbish which is accumulated, around you, etc. Those are not the important things in life, for heaven's sake. Only a certain limited way in which you use them, in which you enjoy the pleasure of having them, etc. We've got to discover all of these things are things we have to discover for ourselves.